Hey, so we are going to continue with our coaching science exploration into how we can improve and impact student athletes by improving our coaching and teaching principles. Today, we're going to focus on athlete vision. So last time we talked about this intersection that athlete learning and development sits right in the middle of, and that is the intersection, or the ecosystem was the term we used, between the task, what we prescribed for the athlete, the actual athlete and his or her readiness or ability to participate in that activity. And then finally, the environment that we create that our learning is largely associated with. So typically when we think of this ecosystem, us as coaches, us as learning designers, have the ability to alter the task. We can progress or regress drills or situations. We can make things harder, easier. We can make them more complicated. We can provide context. We can remove context. We can do a lot of things. With the athlete, a lot of this is on the athlete as far as meeting us in the middle and making sure that they're fueled and ready to go. But for us, we can manipulate how prepared they are for a situation. We can adjust when an activity occurs as it pertains to their, maybe fatigue levels or mental, how locked in they are mentally. But we can influence the athlete. And then we can look at the environment, which could be anything from weather to time of day to field service, just the overall situation that we find our activities within. So these are three different areas that we talk about. Today, I want to specifically talk about the athlete. So when we're coaches and we are designing training opportunities and actually teaching our athletes, we need to keep in mind, and this is a big emphasis in a lot of Doug Lemob's work, especially in the Coach's Guide to Teaching. Fantastic book if you're interested in reading about coaching and sport pedagogy. But basically, his whole thing is, it's not what the coach or the teacher talks about that produces learning. It's what the athlete actually engages within and has the opportunity to be a part of. That's where learning happens. So much of athlete learning, to that point, has to do with what they're actually seeing. So just because I'm talking about something, or just because I'm creating a task or an environment for them to learn in, it doesn't mean that they're seeing exactly what I had hoped they'd seen. So for us as coaches, us as teachers and educators, it's important for us to be really intentional with pushing them to see what we want them to see so that they can actually participate and learn and grow. So we've got three elements here that we can push here for ourselves. As we are coaches, we want to teach the shape of the game. So if I'm a football coach, I'm actually going to teach spacing. I'm going to teach the actual geometry of the field. How far is it to the hash, the top of the numbers? Where are the landmarks on my field? If I'm a different field sport, I'm going to talk about shapes of defense, offense. If I'm a court sport, it may be the same thing. If I'm more of a striking sport like a baseball, softball, maybe I'm talking about just angles that occur on the field, but I'm essentially talking about the overall geometry or the shape of the game. Okay. A lot of work has been done on identifying the difference between signal and basic noise. We really want to make athletes see things that matter. Okay, so to do that, it can be beneficial for us to chunk info. And what I mean by that is essentially we want to make as much context as we can. So if I'm talking about a single package that I'm installing within an offensive or defensive scheme, use keywords and teach things that are related to one another. So athletes have context and things interconnect and work together. So that when I see things out on the field as an athlete, I can relate it back to some things that I've learned in the past. By blocking things together, it creates context, and it also helps us really relate. And then finally, let's really work to improve the mechanics of sight, of looking. Okay, so an example that I've heard recently from one of our strength conditioning coaches, Barry Gant, was that in the game of baseball, okay, so if I'm a hitter and I'm looking out at the pitcher, it's not advantageous for me to just be looking all over. It's also not advantageous for me to just stare at one point on the pitcher. Okay, so what we can potentially do is have specific landmarks that I'm looking at to pick up the baseball. What that's going to allow me to do is to build perception. I'm seeing where the pitcher is developing. These are the mechanics of looking. Okay. So for example, in that situation, maybe I'm looking over the pitcher's throwing hand, shoulder. As he starts his motion, I start to go to the top of his hat, to his logo on his hat. And then as he gets to, maybe he shows me his back hip pocket as he's loading and he's into separation. Maybe I'm now looking for where the ball's going to come. These mechanics of looking may be different for every coach. It may be different, certainly for every sport, but they are the mechanics of exactly what we want our athletes to look at. One bonus thing for you to continue to improve the mechanics of how we look as athletes, let's try to get our athletes away from our cell phone in the hours leading up to practice or competition, because what cell phones do, when I look at cell phones, my field of vision starts to narrow. We want to have the ability to have a wide angle when we go. So 3 areas right away that can help us improve what our athletes see, teach the shape of the game, think signal versus noise by chunking information and providing great contextually rich situations. And then finally, improve the mechanics of looking for your sport.